Hello, my friends, and welcome back to Movie Deputy Reviews, where if you are catching up with me here, you just listened to the entire review on Melania, including the scandalous score that I gave it. But I encourage you to follow me through this one as well, because as much as Melania was all substance and little flash, this is the opposite. You've got a lot of flash and a little substance. There's some substance there, but I want to warn people right off the bat. Just there's some warnings right off the bat. This movie is getting a guilty rating through and through, just because of some of the topics that are discussed in this, and it is very LGBTQ. It is very woke. It is very on a lot of those fronts. So if you do not want young children exposed to that, this is not a movie. Now, if you are encouraged that and you're living that life and that's what you want to encourage your children to be around and do, then you could probably feel comfortable taking them to this, but that would not be me by any stretch of the imagination. Now, I want to say I came into this with a little bit of a bias, admittedly, towards Melania and against Paris. And admittedly, I kind of think of that a little. I mean, I ended up giving Paris a little bit more credit than what I was planning on, and I ended up kind of taking a little bit away from Melania that I wasn't planning on. So I will say that. I will also say, if you have epilepsy, if you have any sort of thing where you're affected by flashy lights and fast movements where it gives you headaches or seizures, this movie is not for you. The entire movie is flashy lights and just flashy scenes and just stuff going bam, 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 all the way through the movie. And it's just, there's little parts where it's not, but the rest of it is just overwhelming, just that. And then what you don't realize about this is, okay, it's amazing that she says music saved her life. This entire story is basically a pop concert with little pieces of story added in. I don't know if a lot of people realize that, because it's called a documentary film. It does not feel like that. It feels like a concert with commentary. And so if you're not expecting that, I want to kind of give you the heads up on that, at least a little bit. Now, she has quite a few special guests that end up joining her along this, and I won't spoil it by giving all those away. You can kind of see some of them there in the trailer. But it's just, when you think of Paris Hilton, you think of the party girl, you think of a simple life, you think of just kind of just the club scene and just this out of control person. And she actually is more than that, which that's still kind of a little hard to grasp. She's an entrepreneur. She does all of these different things. She's a songwriter. Has gotten involved with so many of these things that it totally kind of turns the thing of it on its head. But there's parts of the story that you feel for her, that you just kind of like, where your heart breaks a little bit because of some of the stuff that she's talking about. And she shares things in her life that built her up and things in her life that tore her down. And one of the things that she kind of starts with, and I'll mind you, I will never make fun of anybody in any way, shape, or form I can't talk. I'm not ever going to make fun of anybody any way, shape, or form for dealing with chronic pain. And she said she deals with a lot of back pain and everything, but I'm not tearing that down at all. I'm not questioning that, because everybody deals with chronic pain deals with it on a different level. And so I do feel for her that she deals with that pain. But she was talking back to this troubled teens boarding school thing that she went to. And she was like, oh, we carried 200-pound backpacks and we were hauling logs and hauling boulders. I'm like, it's like, okay. It's kind of like the stories that our grandparents shared. It's like, yeah, I walked through 5 feet of snow uphill both ways to go to school. That's basically what it feels like, what she's talking about in her boarding school days for the troubled kids. And she talks about I'm going to use air quotes here in a not a completely sarcastic way, but she talks about the abuse that she suffered there. And mind you, there are some bad places, but a lot of those places help reform a lot of people and kind of help them get on the right track. And so I'm not going to condemn all the places. I don't know what she specifically went through in the specific place that she was in, But I mean, if you're going to exaggerate the things that kind of hurt you to the point of it, like to that level, it's like, okay, it just kind of put that doubt in my brain. It's like, what else is she exaggerating? It's, the whole thing of a few years ago, the Me Too, Believe All Women, I've never even been a part of that. I don't want to be a part of that because I subscribe to the thing of toxic femininity. Everybody's heard of the term toxic masculinity. I subscribe to the thing of toxic femininity because women do use a lot of feminine wiles to manipulate, to persuade, things like that. And being that she is a Hilton, I think that played more of a role than the typical like toxic femininity, which I'm not 100% accusing her of that either. There's so much that's going on here. And then you see her life as she started to do all these things, and she released her first album, Paris. I think it was back in 2012 it was talking about. And then her second album is Infinite Icon. And I'm like, okay, I'm listening to her sing into the mic and stuff as she's going through. And like, basically this whole thing is a concert. And I'm just like, okay, auto-tune, a lot of auto-tune. And there's a couple times she out-sings the mic a little bit. And you can actually hear her voice. And I'm just like, okay, if this is America's Got Talent, I'm going like this. So I'm no music expert by any means, but if you like her music, great. But if you are not familiar with her music, you are not familiar with the whole party atmosphere, club atmosphere. She has a song that's her anthem that she talks about multiple times in the movie. It's the song "Free" by Ultra Nati. I'm going to totally mispronounce that on there, but that's basically her anthem. She heard the lyrics to that years ago, and that became very much her anthem in life. And it was just, she used that, and she used the lyrics to help her as that kind of went on. I'm just going back to my notes here so I can try to remember. Not that really matters, but if you're familiar with the song, you probably know who I'm talking about. And a friend of mine that went to the movie with me, he's my best friend. Actually, he's my husband, but sorry, my brain is like spazzing there. But he's like, okay, she's a mixture of Monroe and Madonna. And I don't typically recognize her. I just say Marilyn and Madonna. But yeah, that perfectly kind of describes who Paris is. If you combine Marilyn Monroe and Madonna, you kind of get Paris. Now, she has been very forward in being an advocate and an ally for the LGBTQ plus community. And a lot of her fan base is that community. And no hate, no shade to any of that at all, but that is a big part of the story. That's one of the reasons I'm giving this a guilty rating, is that is very much a forward part of this story. And it's part of her story as she's telling it. And she's going through all of this, and there's some moments where there's a fire that she has to deal with, and as you know, fire just kind of wipes away everything, and she lost a lot in this fire, and that kind of changed things for her and changed how she approached this documentary. So she kind of had to do things a little bit different. With some help of some friends, she was able to do that. But the documentary is fluff. It's, like I said, it's basically a concert with commentary. There's the substance level of this. It's like you get to see how she's preparing for this pop career that she's, I guess, always wanted. It's like, okay, what little girl does not sit there with a hairbrush in her hand and sitting there singing into the mic and in front of the mirror, just being silly, and even as a little kid doing that. And she was that, very much so. And that's awesome. It's like, I love encouraging creativity in children and how she's taken that and turned that into something. When she finally achieves this, it's on a whole different level, but she finally achieves this concert at the Palladium. I'm guessing it's in LA. I don't actually know that. But so this whole thing is taking place. And when it's all said and done, she's talking to Carter, her husband. And she's like, this is the most iconic moment of my life. And he's like, don't you mean the second most iconic moment in your life, meaning their marriage? And she's like, honey, I've been planning for this a lot longer than I was planning to get married. So basically, her whole life has been living up to this moment. And, good for you. That is awesome that you were able to make your dreams come true. But had you not been a Hilton, that would not have happened. The money behind your name, the things that you had access to, the privileges that you had access to because of that. Have you helped a lot of people? I'm sure you have, and that's awesome. But you could not have done so without having that name. And that plays such a big role as that. And so I can imagine that the emails I'm going to get, it's like talking about throwing shade and everything like this at her, which if you're not familiar with the term, it means throwing hate. But it's like, I don't mean that at all. It's just the story is fluff. There's no substance to this. Yes, I'm happy that she achieved her dreams. Yes, I'm happy that she's lived this iconic life and that she is able to turn being a victim into a survivor with some of the things that she experienced, and the stuff with the sex tape and the stuff with all of the drama and all the tabloids. And there was a thing where she referred to, I guess there was a reference to her as being an airhead, but instead of AIR, it was HEIR. So it was basically a tongue-in-cheek way of saying that because she's an heiress, she was an airhead. So the whole airhead being spelled that way. And that's one of the things that kind of stuck out in my brain a little bit. Now, this movie is broken up into 5 parts, and each of these 5 parts has something to do with the concert on that. Again, referring to my notes here. So chapter 1 is Welcome Back, and that's where she kind of talks a little bit more about her childhood and just kind of preparing and always having this dream. Chapter 2 is If the Earth is Spinning, and that's kind of when her life started to spiral out of control. Chapter 3 is her superpower. Now, her superpower is her ADHD. And she even has a song about that. But she has really turned her ADHD into a superpower in her life. And yes, it's overwhelming. And yes, it's hard to deal with at times. And a lot of people can relate with that. And it was just that part of, like I said, it's not completely free of substance. It's fluff with substance. And that's one of the substance items, is being able to see how she did that. Chapter 4 is Legacy, and chapter 5 is Infinity. And that just, I mean, all of her typical like taglines, that's hot, sliving. And then there was this one that just kind of stuck with my head, and it was own it, live it, slive it. And then the whole, okay, I've never even seen a single episode of The Simple Life. But I've seen enough memes and stuff like that on TikTok and other things of the whole, I'm going to totally mispronounce this, but the Sanasa, whatever that was, and it's like the song type thing. I'm not going to torture your ears with that, but it's just, this is just all over the place. But ultimately, like I said, it's a concert with commentary. So if that's what you're looking for and you are a fan of Paris, you might enjoy this. If you are not a fan of Paris already, and you want to kind of stay away from all of the woke, all of the rainbow mafia stuff, all the alphabet mafia, however you term that, I've heard both terms for that thing, and it's just, if that's not you, you don't want this movie. There's nothing here for you if that does not fit you. This is not one of those ones that just kind of reaches across and just somehow works for everybody. No, the target audience for this it's very limited. I'm not disparaging the LGBTQ community at all, but I'm saying if that's not what you want, you do not want this movie at all. Just because every part of this movie has to deal with that, even where she's not surrounded by the whole people who are part of that community. She's wearing rainbows and love is love and all of this. And I'm just like, good for you. You're living your best life, but that's not for everybody. And I want to definitely bring that to people's attention. So like I said, that's why I'm giving this a guilty rating. Now, score-wise, I'm going full scorched earth on both of these movies for different reasons. And that's why I'm trying to touch on a lot of this here. But my score for Paris Hilton's Infinite Icon, a visual memoir, I'm coming in at a 3.5 out of 10 on the deputy scale. Now, a 3 is, if you must see it, wait for DVD Blu-ray. It's really hard to recommend going to see this in the theater with what this is. Like I said, it's a concert. If you want to watch this, if you want to turn on the closed captions and sing along with it at home, more power to it. Because if you're watching this movie, you're probably familiar with the music. And like I said, it's just a concert. So I hope that at least helps people. I'm glad that she was able to tell her story. I'm glad that she was able to do something that meant a lot to her. But the audience, by doing it the way that she did it, it's just going to have a very limited audience. And like I said, that's why I'm coming in at that score. So I would love to know your feedback on both Melania and Infinite Icon. Which one are you going to go see? Which one did you have the more interest in? It's just, they're both difficult for different reasons. Like I said, the one you have to be more into the political side of it. This one you have to be more into the rainbow community of the sort. So very different in different ways, very off-putting in different ways, but they both have a target audience. So which one do you fit into? Let me know. As always, be sure to hit the subscribe button and turn on that little notification bell so you can always get the latest and the greatest Movie Deputy content. And as always, I will be back soon with another movie for you. Bye.